Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you that I was a lucky man. I had a simple but good life, a steady job, a roof over my head, and most importantly, a wife I loved. I worked 2 jobs, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I believed in working hard, saving up, and building a future for us. It was tiring, but I didn't complain. I was doing it for us, for the life we were supposed to have together. We lived in a modest but comfortable home. Nothing fancy, nothing grand, but it was enough. I thought I had everything a man could ask for. A wife who smiled at me like I was her world. A partner who waited for me to come home after a long shift. Someone who would send me messages during the day, telling me she missed me, telling me to take care of myself, telling me she loved me. I believed her. I trusted her. You see, when you love someone, you don't question them. You don't sit around wondering if they're lying to you. You just believe. And that's what I did. I believed every word, every smile, every I love you. But not everything is as it seems. Love can make you blind, and I was no exception. I thought I had a perfect marriage. I thought I had a loyal wife. But the truth? The truth was something else entirely. And one day, I would wake up to a reality I never saw coming. It was just another evening, and I had just gotten home from work, my body aching from another long shift. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and I was looking forward to a shower, a meal, and maybe a few hours of sleep before my next shift. That's when my neighbor called out to me. Now, let me be clear. I wasn't particularly close to any of my neighbors. Sure, I exchanged nods, maybe a quick "how's it going?" when I passed them, but that was it. No long conversations, no friendships, just the kind of distant, polite acknowledgement you give to people you live near. So when this man, an older guy, probably in his late 50s, the type who always sat on his porch watching the street, motioned for me to come over, I wasn't sure what to expect. I walked up to him, wiping sweat from my forehead. He looked uneasy. His eyes darted around like he was making sure no one else was listening. "Hey, look, I don't mean to cause trouble," he started, shifting in his seat. "And maybe it's none of my business, but I've noticed something. Your wife, she's been bringing a man home while you're at work." I blinked. Then I laughed. More out of disbelief than anything else. "A man?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Nah, if she brought someone home, it's probably just a relative. Maybe her cousin or something." He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just gave me this look I couldn't explain. "I don't think so," he said quietly. "I've seen him a few times. Same guy. And it's always when you're not around." I stood there, the air suddenly feeling heavier around me. For a second, I almost let his words get to me. Almost. But no. This was ridiculous. My wife, the woman who sent me messages throughout the day, reminding me to eat, the woman who kissed me every morning before I left for work, she wouldn't do something like that. I forced a chuckle, waving him off. "I appreciate the concern, really. But you must be mistaken." He hesitated like he wanted to say more, but finally just gave me a slow nod. "All right," he said. "Maybe I am." I walked away, shaking my head. I tried to shake it off. I did. That night, as I lay in bed, my neighbor's words kept replaying in my head. No matter how much I tried to push the thought away, it stuck with me. I told myself there was a logical explanation for everything. Maybe it was a relative, a friend from work, someone completely innocent. But even as I tried to convince myself, the thought wouldn't leave me. I needed to know, not because I thought she was guilty, but because I wanted to prove to myself that she wasn't. The next day, while she was out running errands, I set up these tiny cameras that have memory cards to store their footage. I didn't want to waste money buying anything too expensive. Not everywhere, just in a few places where I knew she wouldn't notice. I needed proof that my neighbor was wrong, that my wife was the woman I believed her to be. As I adjusted the last one, my hands shook slightly. I hated that I even had to consider this. But at the same time, it felt necessary. If she wasn't doing anything wrong, then what harm would it do? And if she was, then I needed to know. And so, I waited. Days passed before I finally checked the recordings. I had almost convinced myself that I wouldn't find anything, that the cameras had been a waste of time, and that I had let a stranger's words shake me for no reason. I sat down in front of my laptop and opened the files. The first few days' worth of footage was normal, just my wife moving around the house, watching TV, cooking dinner. Nothing suspicious. Nothing unusual. I felt a wave of relief settle over me. I should delete these and forget this ever happened. But I decided to watch the rest. That's when I saw it. My wife standing in our living room, smiling, pouring 2 glasses of wine. A man I had never seen before walked in. He wasn't a relative. He wasn't a friend. He was a stranger. With the way my wife greeted him, it was obvious. They were comfortable with each other. I kept watching as they moved to the couch, sitting too close. He leaned in and kissed her while slipping an arm around her waist. My chest tightened. Then they stood up, holding hands, and went upstairs to our bedroom. My breath hitched. My throat felt dry. But I didn't look away. I watched as they disappeared into the room I had shared with my wife for years. I stared at the empty hallway, at the closed door, knowing exactly what was happening behind it. The details hit me like a punch to the gut. After a while, the man came out wearing my bathrobe, the one I used every morning after a shower. I had to pause the video and close my eyes just to breathe. I sat there for a long time, feeling empty. I could have confronted her. I could have asked her why she had done this, why she had lied to me, why she had let another man into our home, but why give her the satisfaction of explaining away? I knew how it would play out. She would lie, twist the truth, cry and beg, and say all the right things. She would tell me it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she still loved me. Maybe she would even try to make me feel guilty, say I had been too busy working, that I hadn't paid enough attention to her, that it was my fault she had done this. No, I wouldn't give her that chance. I wouldn't give her any reaction at all. Instead, I made a decision, not to argue, not to fight, not to give her a single clue that I knew. So I started planning. Once I decided to leave, I knew I had to do it right. This wasn't just about walking away. I had to erase myself completely. No loose ends. No way for her to track me down. The first thing I did was start saving every extra penny from my 2 jobs. I had always been the one handling our finances, so moving money around wouldn't look strange. I tightened my spending, skipped unnecessary expenses, and made sure to stash away every bit of cash I could. My wife never noticed. She was too distracted, too caught up in her own world to know what was going on. Next, I opened a private account in one of this global payment solution. I knew that if I drained our joint account all at once, it would set off alarms. So, I started small. A few hundred here, a few hundred there, gradual transfers that wouldn't raise suspicion. Bit by bit, I moved my share of our savings into the new account, ensuring that when I left, I wouldn't be walking away with nothing. The credit cards came next. We shared a few, and I knew I had to sever that connection. I told her I was switching banks, and that I wanted to consolidate our accounts for better management. She barely listened. As long as she had access to what she needed, she didn't care about the details. One by one, I shut them down, making sure that when I was gone, she wouldn't have the ability to track my movements through financial transactions. Quitting my jobs was the final step. I put in my resignation quietly, making sure to leave on good terms so no one would have a reason to look for me later. I told my boss I was moving on to something better, a new opportunity in another city. My coworkers wished me well, shook my hand, and told me to keep in touch. They had no idea that once I walked out of that office, they would never hear from me again. And through all of it, my wife was completely oblivious. And at the same time, she was still seeing him, still bringing him into our home, still using our bed for something it was never meant for. The night before I left, I sat in our living room for the last time. I looked around at everything, taking it all in one last time. This isn't my home anymore. It's a place where I was made a fool. I reached for my wedding ring, the simple gold band that had symbolized love, commitment, and a promise that had never been kept. I rolled it between my fingers, feeling its weight one last time before discarding it. I didn't need it where I was going. At 4:30 a.m., I stood at the door with my bag slung over my shoulder. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I turned the handle and stepped outside, letting the door close behind me with a quiet click. I didn't look back. Not once. By the time the sun rose, I was already gone. I didn't know it at the time, but I later found out how it all unfolded for her. How one morning, she woke up and found that the bed beside her was empty. At first, she probably thought nothing of it. But when she went through the house, expecting to find me getting ready or in the shower, that's when the sinking feeling started to creep in. I found out that she walked through the house, calling my name, growing more frantic as the silence stretched on. She probably checked the usual places, but I wasn't there. My things weren't there either. My boots were gone, my jacket was missing, and the spot where I always left my keys by the door was empty. She called my phone, no answer. It went straight to voicemail. A few more calls and still nothing. Panicking, she dialed my work, but that's when she was told I had quit last week. In that moment, she must have known that something wasn't right. I had been gone, and I had disappeared without leaving a trace. Then came the final blow. She rushed to the bank and found that our joint account had been drained. By the time she figured it out, there was hardly anything left. It was at that moment, when the bank told her the truth, that she realized I hadn't just left. I had erased myself from her life completely. I didn't know how long she searched for me. I didn't know the depths of her desperation, or how far she went to find me. But over time I learned the details. She hired a private investigator, spent money she probably couldn't afford, throwing herself into a search for someone who had already made sure there was no trace left behind. The harder she looked, the more she realized how deeply I had planned my exit. Every move I made was deliberate. Every step was calculated. And as time went on, I heard that regret consumed her. She couldn't fix it, couldn't explain it, couldn't even beg for forgiveness. There was no opportunity for any of that. She had no one to blame but herself. And maybe that was the worst part of it, knowing she could never make up for what she had done. While she was searching, I was already somewhere else. I found a place far away from the country, from everything that had tied me to the past. I settled on an island in the Caribbean where no one knew my name, and the pace of life was different, slower, quieter. I found peace there, something I hadn't even known I was missing. At first, I lived alone, enjoying the solitude. The quiet became my refuge, but eventually I met someone. She wasn't like the others. She was kind, understanding, and best of all, she respected me for who I was. I felt what real love should be like, simple, honest, and genuine. We built a life together, one that was built on mutual respect. And when our daughter was born, I knew I had made the right decision. This was the family I had always wanted. The family I thought I would never have again. The future I deserved. And that old life? It was gone. For good. Years passed before she found me. I wasn't hiding anymore, not really. By then I had moved on, built something new, something real. My life in the Caribbean had become everything my past life wasn't: peaceful, honest, and free from the weight of betrayal. I had a family now, a wife who truly loved me, a daughter who was my entire world. I had stopped thinking about my past. It no longer had power over me. Until the day it came knocking. I didn't see her first, she saw me. I later learned that eventually she found me. She flew to my new home. And then she saw me. I was outside, just like any other day, standing by the market, holding my daughter's hand as she tugged at me excitedly, pointing at something she wanted. And that was when my past finally caught up with me. She must have stood there, watching, processing what she was seeing. This wasn't what she expected. Maybe she thought I'd still be broken, still bitter, still carrying the weight of what she had done to me. Maybe she thought I had spent all these years looking over my shoulder, unable to move on. Instead, she found me happy, whole, completely untouched by the pain she had left behind. There she was, my past standing in front of me. She had traveled all this way, spent all these years searching, and yet now that she was standing in front of me, she didn't seem to know what to do. She took a step closer. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She whispered my name, her voice barely above a breath. A plea, a last, desperate attempt to reach something, anything, that still connected us. I tilted my head slightly, studying her like she was a stranger, because that's exactly what she was. For a moment, she searched my face, looking for recognition, for emotion, for something that told her I still remembered, that I still cared. But all she found was emptiness. I let the silence stretch between us, long enough for the truth to sink in. Then, finally, I spoke. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" The words hit her harder than any scream, any accusation, any angry confrontation ever could. She blinked, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Defeat. I didn't wait for her to respond. I didn't give her a chance to explain, to cry, to beg. I simply turned around. I took my daughter's hand and walked away. And I never looked back. As I walked away, I felt nothing, just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally realize that the past has no power over you anymore. There was a time when I thought I would never heal, that the betrayal would haunt me forever. Her betrayal had erased everything we once had. Years of love, trust, and shared memories, all undone by a single choice. But that was the past, a closed chapter, and I had no interest in reopening it. Some betrayals are not meant to be forgiven, only forgotten. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have confronted her? Would you have left the way I did? Or would you have handled things differently? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe they'll find the answer they've been looking for. Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Robert, and I'm 34 years old. For many years, I thought I was in a solid relationship built on mutual support and trust. Turns out, I was just a convenient ATM with emotional attachment. I work for a healthcare software company in San Diego, California. The salary is good and the job is stable. My girlfriend Vanessa was 31. We'd been together for years before my realization that she saw me as a fool. We met through a mutual friend at an event and started dating shortly after. When we met, Vanessa was working in marketing for a tech company, made decent money, had her own apartment, seemed to have her life together. She was outgoing and fun. I loved her. We talked vaguely about marriage, about buying a house together eventually, and raising a family. Then, about 2 years into the relationship, Vanessa lost her job. Company-wide layoffs, just budget cuts that eliminated her entire department. She was devastated, understandably. That job had been a big part of her identity. She started freelancing after that. Marketing consulting, social media management for small businesses, and content creation. Hustling for clients, piecing together income from multiple sources. It was unstable and stressful, and the money was inconsistent. I supported her through it. Emotionally first, listening when she vented about difficult clients, celebrating when she landed new contracts, and reassuring her that she'd find stability eventually. And financially, I started covering more of our shared expenses. Picked up her full rent a few times when her income was particularly low. Paid for her groceries more often than not. Covered dinners out, utilities, and little things that added up. I didn't mind at the time. Relationship is all about partnership. Sometimes one person needs more support, and you provide it because you trust they'd do the same for you. Then, about 4 months after her layoff, Vanessa asked me for a loan. She brought it up hesitantly. Said she was really behind on some bills. Her car needed repairs that would cost about $1,500. Rent was coming up, and she hadn't landed enough contracts that month to cover it. She was stressed and embarrassed to ask, but she needed help. She asked for $4,000. Said it would cover everything. The car, rent, some credit card bills she'd fallen behind on. Promised she'd pay me back in full once she got her tax refund, which she was expecting in a few months. I didn't hesitate. Told her, of course, I'd help. Transferred the money that night, $4,000 from my savings account to hers. Sent her a text afterward. Transferred the $4,000. Pay me back when you get your refund. No rush. Love you. She'd responded, thank you so much. I promise I'll pay you back in full as soon as that refund hits. You're literally saving my life right now. Red heart. Weeks turned into months. Vanessa's freelance work continued inconsistently. I kept supporting her financially by covering more of her living expenses. Then, about 2 months after I'd given her the loan, she mentioned casually that her tax refund had come through. She was excited because it meant she could breathe a little easier. She didn't mention paying me back. I waited a few days, figuring maybe she needed to handle some immediate expenses first. A week passed. Still nothing. I brought it up gently one evening. Hey, so now that you got your refund, want to talk about paying back that loan? Vanessa's expression shifted as she got defensive immediately. Said she'd had to use the refund for other things. That she was still behind on bills. That she'd pay me back eventually, but couldn't right now. I said I understood, but reminded her I asked because she'd specifically said she'd pay me back when the refund came. She got irritated. Said I was pressuring her. That she didn't appreciate being made to feel guilty when she was already stressed about money. I dropped it. Didn't want to make a big deal out of this situation. But then I started noticing things when I went over to Vanessa's place. I noticed she got a set of new clothes. For someone who is struggling financially, this shouldn't be your priority. I spotted a designer handbag that I knew cost at least $600. From her conversation, I could deduce that she went out with friends multiple times a week. She was spending money like someone who had it, while owing me $4,000 and claiming she was broke. At this point, I was disappointed at her for being wasteful. I tried bringing up repayment one more time about a month later. Again, she got defensive. Again, she accused me of being unsupportive and pressuring her during a difficult time. I let it go. It started to feel like I should accept I wasn't getting the money back. Then, about 6 months after the loan, I discovered Vanessa was cheating on me. I found out when she came over to my place and we ordered food with her phone. So I mistakenly left the app when the phone was with me and opened a notification message that was up there. The message I saw at the top was clearly not platonic. When I opened it and checked through, there was no doubt what was going on here. There were plans to meet up, references to times they'd already been together, alongside photos and videos that were exchanged. I stood there reading through enough messages to understand the situation completely. They'd been seeing each other for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. When Vanessa was getting ready to go home the next evening, I confronted her calmly, told her I'd seen the messages. She didn't deny it, but she got angry instead, like I was the one who'd done something wrong by looking at her computer. Said our relationship had been dead for months anyway, that she'd needed attention I wasn't giving her. I was heartbroken to hear this. I told her we were done, that she should pick up whatever property of hers is left in this house. She agreed coldly. As she was gathering her things, I brought up the money. Before you go, we need to talk about the $4,000 you owe me. Vanessa froze. Turned to look at me with this calculating expression. I don't have it right now. I know, but we need a payment plan. When can you start paying me back? She set down the bag she'd been packing. Robert, you're really going to come after me for money right now? When we're breaking up? I fired back at her. You borrowed $4,000 and promised to pay it back. The relationship ending doesn't erase that debt. Her expression hardened. I'll pay you when I can. Don't pressure me about it. I'm not pressuring you. I'm asking for a reasonable timeline. You're making me feel unsafe, she said suddenly. I blinked, confused. What? "You're being aggressive about this money. It's making me feel threatened." She replied, "I'm being calm." I said, "I just want to know when you'll pay back what you borrowed." She grabbed her bag and walked toward the door. "I need space from you right now. This conversation is making me uncomfortable." Then she left. I stood in the apartment trying to process what had just happened. The sudden pivot to claiming I was making her unsafe felt manipulative, but I didn't know what to make of it yet. Over the next week, Vanessa moved on with her life. I brought up repayment once more via text after about a month. "We still need to discuss the $4,000 you owe me. Can we set up a payment plan?" Her response, "Stop harassing me about money." I said, "I'll pay you when I can." I told her that I wasn't harassing her. "I'm asking for repayment of a documented loan." She responded with, "You're pressuring me, and it needs to stop." I was getting frustrated, but tried to stay level-headed. "This isn't harassment. This is me asking for repayment of money you legally owe me." No response. 2 days later, around 8 in the evening, I decided to go to her place. I just wanted to talk in person, figure out a reasonable payment plan. I wasn't angry, just wanted a resolution, because there is no way I am forfeiting such money for someone who cheated on me. I knocked on her front door, waited, knocked again. I could hear movement inside. Saw a light on in what I assumed was her room. "Vanessa, I know you're home. I just want to talk about the money you owe me. Can you please come to the door?" Nothing. I knocked once more. "I'm not leaving until we have this conversation. You borrowed $4,000. You promised to pay it back. We need to figure this out." I saw movement in the window of her room. She was there, definitely hearing me, just refusing to come to the door. After about 10 minutes of this, me knocking periodically and asking her to talk, her ignoring me, I gave up and left. Frustrated, but not worried. Figured I'd try again another way. 3 days later, I was served with legal papers at my apartment. A temporary restraining order, filed by Vanessa. I read through it, disbelief growing with every line. She claimed I'd been harassing her for weeks, showing up at her home uninvited, making threats about money, and making her feel unsafe. She'd included a written statement describing me as aggressive and threatening. Said she feared for her safety, and she'd attached an audio recording from the night I'd gone to her door. In the recording, you could hear me saying, "I'm not leaving until we have this conversation," in a way that, stripped of context, sounded vaguely threatening. But she edited it, cut out the parts where I'd been calm and reasonable, made it sound like I was there to intimidate her rather than just asking for repayment of a legitimate debt. The restraining order was temporary, valid until a court hearing in 3 weeks. During that time, I was legally required to stay away from her. No contact. No going near her home or workplace. No texts, calls, emails, or social media contact. Violation would mean arrest. I sat in my apartment holding these papers, trying to process what was happening. She'd weaponized the legal system against me, used a restraining order, something meant to protect actual victims of harassment or violence, to avoid paying back money she legitimately owed me. My first instinct was anger. I wanted to call her, text her, tell her this was insane, and she knew it. But I didn't, because that's exactly what she wanted, for me to violate the order so I'd face criminal consequences. Instead, I got strategic. First, I gathered every piece of documentation I had about the loan, the original text exchange where she asked for the money and promised repayment. The bank transfer showed I'd sent her $4,000. Her text said she'd pay me back from her tax refund. Screenshots of later conversations where I'd asked about repayment, and she'd been evasive or defensive. Everything is organized chronologically in a digital folder and printed out in hard copies. Then I looked through all our communications, texts, social media messages, emails, for any evidence of threats or harassment on my part. There was nothing. Every message I'd sent had been calm and reasonable. Asking for repayment, yes, but never threatening. Never aggressive. The only thing she had was that edited audio from the one time I'd gone to her door. And even that, in full context, was just me asking to talk about the money she owed. Next, I hired an attorney. Found a civil litigation attorney who specializes in contract disputes and restraining order defense. Met with her that week. Showed her all my documentation. The attorney reviewed everything carefully. Then told me I had a strong case, but needed to be extremely careful. The restraining order, even though it's temporary and based on false claims, is legally binding, she explained. If you violate it in any way, even accidentally, you'll be arrested. That will hurt your credibility in the hearing. So what do? You follow it perfectly. No contact with her whatsoever. Block her on everything, so there's no chance of accidental communication. Let her think she's won. Meanwhile, we prepare for the hearing. I followed the attorney's advice exactly. I blocked Vanessa's number, email, and all social media. Made it impossible for me to contact her even if I wanted to. I didn't go anywhere near her home or workplace. Didn't ask mutual friends about her. Didn't post anything about the situation on social media. I disappeared from her life completely, just as the restraining order required. But I also filed something of my own, a small claims case for the $4,000 she owed me. California's small claims court allows you to sue for up to $10,000. My case was straightforward. She borrowed money, promised to repay it, and hadn't. I had written documentation of all of it. My attorney helped me file the paperwork. We included all the evidence, the texts, the bank transfer, everything. Vanessa would be served with notice of the lawsuit separately from the restraining order. Then I waited 3 weeks until the restraining order hearing. Let Vanessa think she'd successfully shut me up. The hearing finally arrived. We met at the county courthouse on a Tuesday morning. Vanessa was there with her own attorney, a woman who apparently did a lot of restraining order cases. I was there with my own attorney. The judge, an older woman, called the case and asked Vanessa to present her evidence for why the restraining order should remain in place. Vanessa's attorney went first. Claimed I'd been harassing Vanessa for money for months. That I'd shown up at her home uninvited and refused to leave. I'd made statements that made her fear for her safety. They played the edited audio recording of me at her door. The judge listened to it. Asked, "Is there any evidence of actual threats?" Her attorney fumbled slightly. "Your Honor, the defendant's behavior and tone constitute harassment. He showed up uninvited and refused to leave. That's threatening behavior. But were there explicit threats made?" The judge asked once again. Vanessa's attorney responded. His insistence and refusal to leave created a threatening environment. The judge didn't look impressed, but let her continue. They showed text messages where I'd asked about repayment, taken out of context to make it look like I was obsessively contacting her about money. But they couldn't show any actual threats, because I'd never made any. Then it was our turn. My attorney stood and calmly presented our case. "Your Honor, this restraining order is being used to avoid repayment of a legitimate debt. Mr. Robert loaned the respondent $4,000 with clear documentation of the loan agreement and her promise to repay. When he asked for repayment, she filed this false restraining order to silence him." My attorney showed the judge all our documentation. The original loan, request, and promise of repayment. The bank transfer. The full text conversation history showing all my requests for repayment was calm and reasonable. She also showed that I'd filed a small claims case for the debt, proving this was a financial dispute, not a harassment situation. The audio recording provided is edited and taken out of context. My attorney continued. Mr. Robert went to her residence once to request a conversation about repayment. He knocked on the door and asked to talk. When she didn't answer, he left. That's not harassment. That's a creditor seeking repayment. The judge reviewed all the materials carefully, asked to see the full text message history, which my attorney had printed out in its entirety. After several minutes, the judge addressed both parties, asking Vanessa if I ever threatened her with physical harm. Vanessa hesitated before saying, "He made me feel threatened." The judge reminded her that that was not what she asked, asking Vanessa again if I explicitly threatened to harm her physically. Vanessa responded with, "No." Vanessa claimed I kept asking for money, and I asked over 3 times in a week. She claimed that when I came to her place, I refused to leave. But since she couldn't establish that I tried to do anything forcefully at her place, the judge was unimpressed. She set down the papers and addressed both parties directly. This court is not the place to settle financial debts or personal arguments. Vanessa, you borrowed money from Mr. Robert with a documented promise to repay. He has every right to seek repayment through proper legal channels, which he has done by filing a small claims case. She looked at Vanessa sternly. Filing a restraining order to avoid paying a legitimate debt is an abuse of this court's protective measures. These orders exist to protect people from genuine threats, not to weaponize against creditors. The judge reviewed the documents once more, then delivered her ruling. The temporary restraining order is dissolved immediately. Mr. Robert is free to pursue his small claims case without restriction. Vanessa, you are fortunate I'm not imposing sanctions for filing a frivolous restraining order. I suggest you settle the debt you owe before the small claims hearing. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. I felt relief wash over me. Vindication. Vanessa looked stunned. Her attorney gathered papers quickly, clearly wanting to leave. My attorney turned to me. Perfect outcome. Now we focus on the small claims case. I thanked her. Watched as Vanessa and her attorney left the courtroom without making eye contact. 3 weeks later, we had the small claims hearing. We had a different judge, a middle-aged man. I presented my case, showed all the documentation again. The loan agreement via text, the bank transfer, Vanessa's written promise to repay from her tax refund, and evidence that she'd received the refund months ago. My attorney wasn't required for small claims. People usually represent themselves. But she'd coached me thoroughly on how to present. Vanessa represented herself. Her attorney apparently didn't handle small claims cases. Vanessa tried to make it emotional, said I was trying to control her financially, that the loan had been a gift, not a loan, that I was using the courts to harass her further. The judge cut her off. Do you have any written evidence that this was intended as a gift rather than a loan? No, she answered. Did you promise in writing to repay it? The judge adds. I said I would when I got my tax refund, but Vanessa struggled to let out. Then the judge fired. And did you receive your tax refund? Vanessa was quiet. Answer the question, please. Yes, she said. And how much did you pay Mr. Robert? The judge queried. Nothing, but I had other expenses. That's not relevant to whether you owe the debt, the judge said firmly. The evidence clearly shows you borrowed $4,000 with a written promise to repay. You acknowledged the debt multiple times. You received funds that you specifically said you would use for repayment and chose not to. He reviewed the documents once more, then delivered his judgment. I rule in favor of the plaintiff. Ms. Vanessa, you owe Mr. Robert $4,000 plus court filing fees of $75. Total judgment, $4,075. He looked at Vanessa. You have 30 days to pay in full or arrange a payment plan with the plaintiff. Failure to pay will result in wage garnishment or bank levy. Another gavel bang. I'd won. Vanessa left the courtroom quickly, face red, clearly humiliated. I felt satisfied. This whole situation had been stressful and frustrating, but satisfied that justice had been served. 30 days passed. Vanessa didn't pay, didn't contact me about a payment plan, just ignored the judgment entirely. So I went back to my attorney, asked what the next steps were for actually collecting the money. She explained the process. I could file for wage garnishment if Vanessa were employed, or a bank levy if she had funds in a bank account. Through some basic research, checking her social media, which was still public, I confirmed Vanessa had gotten a full-time marketing job at a mid-sized company, no longer freelancing, which meant she had regular wages that could be garnished. My attorney filed the paperwork for wage garnishment. The court approved it. The order was sent to Vanessa's employer's payroll department. Starting the following month, a portion of Vanessa's paycheck, calculated based on California's wage garnishment laws, would be automatically deducted and sent to me until the full judgment was paid. She'd have no choice, no way to avoid it. Every payday, she'd watch money leave her account and go to me. The garnishment started about 6 weeks after the small claims judgment. I received the first payment via direct deposit from the court system. Then another the next month. Then another. At this rate, it would take about 18 months to fully repay the debt plus the court fees. But I didn't care about the timeline. I cared that she was being held accountable, that she tried to weaponize the legal system against me and had failed. Her restraining order had been dissolved with a judicial warning about filing frivolous claims. She'd lost the small claims case with a public judgment against her. Now she had to watch a portion of every paycheck go directly to me for the next year and a half. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. I thought about all of this one evening while looking at the latest garnishment payment notification. Vanessa had thought a restraining order would silence me. It would make me too afraid of legal consequences to pursue the debt. Would let her walk away from $4,000 she legitimately owed me. But I hadn't broken the order. I'd followed it perfectly. Used the time to build my case, gather evidence, and file my own legal action. I'd let her think she'd won while quietly preparing to destroy her strategy. And when we finally faced each other in court, the truth was obvious to both judges. She was the one manipulating the system. I was the one seeking a legitimate resolution to a financial dispute. You don't destroy someone by fighting louder or getting more aggressive. You do it by staying calm, following the rules perfectly, and letting their own lies collapse under the weight of evidence. Vanessa's restraining order attempt is now part of the public record. Anyone who searches her name in the court system will find it filed and dissolved within weeks as frivolous. The small claims judgment is also a public record. Documentation that she borrowed money and refused to repay until forced by court order. Her credibility is permanently damaged in any future legal proceedings. The relationship ended badly. The breakup was painful. Discovering the cheating hurt. But at least I got justice for the financial manipulation. At least I didn't let her weaponize the courts against me successfully. At least I proved that staying calm and strategic beats emotional retaliation every time. Looking back, here's what I learned. Document everything. Every financial transaction, every promise, every conversation. You never know when you'll need evidence to protect yourself. Stay calm when someone tries to manipulate you. The angrier and more aggressive you get, the more you play into their narrative. By staying measured, I maintained credibility while Vanessa's claims fell apart. Follow legal orders perfectly, even when they're unjust. The restraining order was based on lies, but violating it would have only hurt me. By obeying it completely, I showed the judge I was reasonable while Vanessa was manipulative. Use the system properly instead of fighting against it. I could have tried to confront Vanessa directly or pressure her through mutual friends. Instead, I used small claims court, the proper legal channel for debt collection. Let people's lies destroy themselves. I didn't need to convince the judges that Vanessa was lying. I just needed to present the truth clearly and let them see the contradictions in her story. Patience wins. It took months from the loan to the final garnishment order. But by being patient and strategic, I got a better outcome than any amount of angry confrontation would have achieved. Some people will try to weaponize anything against you, even systems meant to protect victims. The only defense is to stay clean, stay documented, and let the truth speak for itself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just justice. Slow, methodical, inevitable justice. And that's exactly what I got.